Welcome once again to my CBSE English class. Dear children, we have come to part 3 of We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together, written by Gordon Cook and Alan East. I checked and rechecked my calculations. We had lost our main compass, and I was using a spare which had not been corrected for magnetic variation. I made an allowance for this and another estimate of the influence of the westerly currents which flow through this part of the Indian Ocean. About 2 p.m. I went on deck and asked Larry to steer a course of 185 degrees. If we were lucky, I told him with a conviction I did not feel, he could expect to see the island at about 5 p.m. Then, with a heavy heart, I went below, climbed on my bunk, and amazingly dozed off. When I woke, it was 6 p.m. and growing dark. I knew we must have missed the island, and with the sail we had left, we couldn't hope to beat back into the westerly winds. At that moment, a tousled head appeared to my bunk. "Can I have a hug?" Jonathan asked. Sue was right behind him. "Why am I getting a hug now?" I asked. "Because you are the best daddy in the world and the best captain," my son replied. "Not today, John, I'm afraid." "Why, you must be," said Sue in a matter-of-fact voice. "You have found the island." "What?" I shouted. "It's out there in front of us," they chorused, "as big as a battleship." I rushed on deck and gazed with relief at the stark outline of Ile Amsterdam. It was only a bleak piece of volcanic rock with little vegetation, the most beautiful island in the world. We anchored offshore for the night, and the next morning all 28 inhabitants of the island cheered as they helped us ashore. With land under my feet again, my thoughts were full of Larry and Herbie, cheerful and optimistic under the direst stress, and of Mary, who stayed at the wheel for all those crucial hours. Most of all, I thought of a 7-year-old girl who did not want us to worry about a head injury, which subsequently took 6 minor operations to remove a recurring blood clot between skin and skull, and of a 6-year-old boy who was not afraid to die. So the narrator Gordon Cook, he kept checking and rechecking his calculations to find out the location of Ile Amsterdam, though his main compass was lost, with a spare compass which was not very accurate. Along with that compass, and by studying the influence of the westerly currents that were blowing in that part of the Indian Ocean, he managed to make a calculation. So at around 2 p.m. he went on deck and told Larry to steer the ship 185 degrees, and told him that if they were lucky enough, they would be able to see the island at about 5 p.m. He said this with a conviction which he actually did not feel. That means he was actually not very confident whether his calculation would be correct. Then, with a heavy heart, he went down, climbed on his bunk, and amazingly, because he was so tired, he dozed off to a deep sleep. When he woke up with a sudden jerk, it was already 6 p.m. and it was growing dark. He thought that he had missed the island. So he was once again very hopeless, because he knew that if he missed the island, he would not be able to fight against the westerly winds there. At that moment, a dishevelled head, a tousled head of his son appeared near his bunk, and the voice said, the little boy John spoke. "Can I have a hug?" he told his father, and the narrator saw that his daughter was also standing behind John. "Why am I getting a hug?" the father said. Why do you want to hug me now?" Then the son said, "Because you are the best daddy in the world and you are the best captain." But the narrator never knew what had happened during the time when he was sleeping. So he said, "No, not today. Today I am not the best daddy or the best captain in the world." Then Sue said, "No, why not? You are, because we have found the island." The narrator was so pleasantly surprised to hear that they had found the island. And the daughter told him, "Look out, it's right in front of you, as big as a battleship." So he rushed to the deck, and he gave a sigh of relief when he saw the outline of the island of Ile Amsterdam. So in reality, Ile Amsterdam was a very not a very beautiful island. It was of volcanic rock. It had hardly any vegetation or greenery in it. But at that moment, Ile Amsterdam was the most beautiful island in the world for the narrator, because Ile Amsterdam was the only hope of survival for them. So for that night, he just anchored the ship to the shore and they spent their night in the ship itself. The next morning, the 28 inhabitants who lived in the island, who belonged to that French base, who worked in the French base in that island, they all came and cheered them up and helped them come to the shore. Now, once the narrator stood on his own feet on the island of Ile Amsterdam, when the land touched his feet again, his mind was full of thoughts of gratitude and gratefulness for the different people who had helped him to tide over this difficult situation. First of all, his heart went out to Larry and Herbie, the two sailors whom he had hired, because they were always cheerful and optimistic even in the most distressful circumstances. Then he thought of Mary, his wife, who had been strong enough to stay at the wheel all the time in those crucial hours when he was busy pumping out water and repairing the ship. And most of all, he thought of his two children. He thought of his 7-year-old daughter Susan, who did not want to worry him with her head injury, because she thought that her father was doing a greater job of saving their lives. And you know what? This head injury was actually not a small one. It took 6 operations to get it cured. And then, last but not the least, he thought of his 6-year-old son John, who had told him that he was not afraid to even die as long as his family was with him. Well, let us now discuss some questions related to the story. Question number 1. What were the steps taken by the captain to protect the ship when the rough weather began? So the narrator Gordon Cook, who was the captain of the ship, to protect the ship when the rough weather had started, to combat that rough weather, first of all he dropped the storm jib and lashed the heavy mooring rope in a loop across the stern. Thirdly, he double lashed everything. He rehearsed the life raft drill, put on oilskins, life jackets, and attached lifelines. So these are the different things he did to combat the rough weather. We'll repeat again. He dropped the storm jib, lashed a heavy mooring rope across the stern of the ship, that is the back of the ship. He double lashed everything. He rehearsed the life raft drill, put on oilskins, life jackets, attached the lifelines, and were waiting. Question number 2. How did the captain put a check on the flooding waters in the ship? So that means the question is, what did the captain do to check the flooding of the water into the ship? Now, because the starboard side of the ship was open and the water was pouring in through that side, the captain stretched canvas and secured waterproof hatch covers over the gaping holes, open holes. Secondly, he connected a spare electric pump under the chartroom floor to an outpipe and tried to drain out the water which was pouring into the ship. So we'll repeat once again. In order to check the flooding of water into the ship, the captain first of all stretched canvas on the open starboard side and also secured waterproof hatch covers over the open holes through which the water might enter. Then he connected a spare electric pump under the chartroom floor to an outpipe so that the water which was pouring inside the ship could be drained out of the ship. Question number 3. Describe the mental condition of the voyagers on the 4th and the 5th of January. Now, on the 4th of January, what did the crew see? The crew found that things were turning out to a slightly normal condition after 36 hours of continuous pumping out water from the ship. And on the 5th of January, what happened? The situation reverted. Once again, the weather became bad. The children asked, if you remember, the son John asked if they would be dying, if death was imminent. And they also said that if they die, they want to all die together. And this is the remark, this is the statement of his son John, which made him determined once again to fight back against all odds. So we'll just repeat once more the mental condition of the voyagers on the 4th and the 5th of January. On the 4th of January, the crew found that things were turning back to normalcy after 36 hours of continuous pumping out of water. But on the 5th of January, the situation became worse again. The children asked if they would die, but they also assured the father that they were not afraid to die as long as they were together. And this remark of the children, of one of his children, this remark of his son, steeled the captain's determination, made the captain's determination once again very strong to fight back against all odds. Question number 4. Describe the shifts in the narration of the events as indicated in the 3 sections of the text, and then give a suitable title to each section. Children, you must have seen that the story is divided into 3 sections. The first section is when the narrator describes the cheerful and the adventurous spirit of the voyage when they started from Plymouth and they reached Cape Town. A little after they left Cape Town also, they celebrated a wonderful Christmas on board. And after that, after New Year, a massive wave hit their ship. It damaged their ship. The narrator was thrown overboard, but he had a miraculous return back to the ship from the ocean. And then it also describes his courageous efforts made to save the ship by mayday calls, by pumping out water. All this happens in section 1. Section B of the story is about what? The search for an island. The cheerfulness of the first part, in the initial part of the story, is now replaced by anxiety to survive. They wanted to cling to something to survive and to find the 2 tiny islands in the Pacific Ocean which they had located with the help of their charts, Amsterdam and some other island. So search for the island is the main theme of the second section. The third section shows the triumph of finding out, of reaching Amsterdam. So the third section, it shows the triumph, the victory of their spirit, the victory of their seamanship, the victory of their skill as sailors, as he was able to save his family and the other crew members by locating and reaching the island of Amsterdam. This is the third section of the story. So once again, let us revise. The first section of the story initially describes the cheerful and adventurous spirit of the voyage, the wonderful Christmas celebration on board, and then it goes on to describe how the huge gigantic wave had hit their ship, damaged their ship, how the narrator was thrown overboard into the waves of the ocean, but had a miraculous return back to the ship. And then after he reached back to the ship, the courageous efforts that he made to save the ship by pumping out the water, by covering it with canvas, and by making mayday calls to the emergency ground staff. This is all about section A. Now we also need to give a suitable title to each section. So for example, for section A, we can give a title, The Big Wave. the gigantic wave. Then section 2. The second section is all about the search for an island. The cheerfulness of the first section, the hard work of the first section is replaced by an anxiety to survive in the second section. What was the anxiety? He was anxious to find location of a piece of land where they could anchor ashore. And his search for those two islands, and one of them Il Amsterdam, which he had decided to go to. So the second section subtitle, what can we give children? It can be Search for Pinpricks in the Ocean, because those two islands were called the pinpricks in the ocean. Then we come to the third section, section 3. That was a section of triumph and victory. It shows the triumph of the spirit, of the seamanship, of the skill of the narrator as a sailor, as a captain, and how he was able to save his family and crew members by reaching the island of Il Amsterdam. So section 3 subtitle can be, in the words of his children, the best daddy, or the best captain, or the triumph of seamanship, anything. So you are free to choose your own subtitles. Thanks to one and all for watching this video. I am VK Jayashree from Excel English with VKJ. Kindly like, share and subscribe to my channel Excel English with VKJ. Thank you.